Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to the appendicular skeleton again. This is the lower appendages and the pelvis. Um, I'm going to keep the feet and hands separate from the upper and lower appendages because they are particularly complex for people to remember, especially with the carpals and the tarsals. And for most classes, unfortunately, yes, you will need to remember uh, the carpals and the tarsals, and there are a lot of them. But hopefully I can clear things away for you guys. Should be treated as a supplement, but I will try to include as much information as possible. Okay, again, we're going to be moving extremely fast because this is a supplement. So this is the pelvis over here. So we have the right and left pelvic bones here. Everything else ignored. This is the only thing that is important for the appendicular skeleton. And this is the axial skeleton, and we will get into these femurs later. So over here we have it's not listed here, but we have the iliac fossa here because it kind of looks like a bowl over here. All right. And then we have the iliac crest. Make sure to write that down. This is the iliac crest. So this area right here, just imagine that was highlighted. This peak over here, that's the iliac crest. And before we move any further, let's just divide the pelvis into three different bones. Let's focus on the right pelvis over here. We have number one, this top part is the iliac, the ilium, and then this part over here, which is more posteriorly, um, is the ischium, and then over here is the pubis, where we have this giant foramen over here. There are three different bones that make up the pelvis, are largely fused together. All right, and then moving down more, we have more complicated terms to remember. But remember, a spine is this kind of sharp protuberance here, and this is anterior and then superior and part of the ilium, so we call this the anterior superior iliac spine right here, and then below that it must be anterior, so forward, and then inferior down iliac spine. And then same thing for the back. If you looked at the back of the pelvis, we'd have the posterior superior iliac spine right here, and then the posterior inferior iliac spine right here. And you will likely need to remember that. And then we only have one ischial spine right here because that's on the ischium. And then we have the obturator foramen right here. And then these two pubaces, if you will, merge together to create the pubic arch. And then we have the pubic symphysis, and the symphysis is just a fibrocartilaginous disc that holds these two together. And the inferior pubic ramus is here, and then we have the ischioramus up over here. And then the more important thing to remember is the ischial tuberosity right here. It's a bunch of little speckled parts. So the superior pubic ramus is also here. All right, and lastly we have the greater sciatic notch. So this notch right here, part of the hip bone, and then right here more inferiorly, below the ischial spine, we have the lesser sciatic notch, which is smaller. All right, let's get into the femur. Now, some parts are missing from this model, but this is a pretty good one. Oops. All right, so moving superiorly to inferiorly. And by the way, it gets a lot easier after the pelvis. I know the pelvis is extremely complicated to explain, but just bear with me here. So right here we have the head of the femur, very simple, and then the epiphyseal lines, which is not really important. But then we have the neck of the femur, which is this middle part over here. And then we have the greater trochanter. Remember, trochanter is the largest protuberance of bone, and it's only found in the femur. And then conversely, we have the lesser trochanter here. And then we have the shaft of the femur. And then we will have the lateral epicondyle. Remember, this ball is facing more medially, always medially connecting to the pelvis. So this must be a right. So this is facing laterally. So this is the lateral epicondyle. Epi meaning above, condyle meaning the articulating cartilage region. and this is the medial epicondyle. So this must be the condyle. So this is the lateral condyle because there's cartilage here, hyaline cartilage, and then medial condyle. And then the patellar surface would be right here because that's where the anterior or superior part of the patella rests. All right, now this is a low quality picture, but I wanted to include more of the femur. I apologize for the low quality picture, but just bear with me. On the posterior or the anterior part, this is still right. You would have the intertrochanteric line or crest, or intertrochanteric lines here, but then it comes around over here posteriorly to make a crest right there, and that's where all the ligaments and stuff will sit. And then over here we have the fovea of the head, and that's called the fovea capitis. So the ligament runs through there to connect to the pelvis, and that's an intracapsular ligament. It's a type of joint. All right, and then over here, same thing, but when we flip it over posteriorly, we can see the linea aspera. This is a line on the posterior part of the femur. And then between the two condyles are the intercondylar fossa or intercondylar notch here. You can see that because it's between the two condyles. All right, lastly, let's go over the tibia and fibula. So we'll start off with the tibia here. We have the lateral condyle. So this is a cartilaginous region. A lateral must always be facing laterally. So this must be a right tibia. And a way to tell, they're usually grouped up here as two. So this fibula always faces laterally, so this must be a right. Because if it faces medially, then that must mean it's mismatched. And this is an anterior view. We have the medial condyle, just like the lateral condyle. Don't get mixed up between the femur and this. And then it's not listed here, but we have the intercondylar eminence here. You can see these little two protuberances. And that splits up the medial and lateral menisci. And then over here we have the tibial tuberosity, and that's where the posterior part of the patellar tendon attaches. Now we have the tibia here, that's the shin bone. And then over here, or the body of the tibia, sorry. And over here we have the anterior border crest, or what we know as the shin. That cursed thing that we kick on scooters all the time and get ourselves hurt. So right there. And then over here we have the medial malleolus. It's always facing medially. And that malleolus will connect to part of the foot. Now fibula is pretty easy. You have the head of the fibula, the body of the fibula or shaft of the fibula, and the lateral malleolus of the fibula, and then sometimes include the fibular notch. And the fibula is one of the hardest bones to discern from left and right. And there's a way to do this, and I will go into that in another video, but for the most part in your anatomy class, you'll be learning how to do that. This is why it's important to use bone boxes and study with actual models. Alright, so that's pretty much it. Some considerations. Number one, spend particular time learning the pelvis, as it is one of the most challenging structures to learn in the body. Remember that the femur is the only bone in the human body with trochanters. You've already established that. At this point, begin to use your critical thinking skills to predict and delineate where some ligaments might be, because that's probably where your class is going to head next, or your course. Now, also what I wanted to establish is that this is the lesser pelvis, this region over here, also the pelvic brim. But this area right here, including the inside, is called the lesser pelvis, and this is a true pelvis. And then over here, this part, this big part over here, between the anterior superior iliac spine and the other one, that's the false pelvis or the greater pelvis. And it's called the true pelvis here because baby passes through. And sometimes the pubic symphysis breaks in females to allow the baby to pass through. Alright, that was pretty much it. I hope this helped you guys, and I will see you in the hand video, the hands and the feet. Goodbye.